Welcome to Echoes of Crime YouTube channel. Before we dive into this one, hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's proof that even from the grave, the truth can still scream. The woods behind Carson Ridge had always been quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to stop. That changed on a cold October morning in 2003, when a hunter stumbled upon something buried in the frost. At first, he thought it was a mannequin, the stiff shape of a man half hidden under pine needles. But the smell told him otherwise. The body had been there for years. When detectives arrived, they noticed the victim's hands were bound with a rope that had fused with his bones. A faded leather wallet lay nearby, cracked and moldy, but inside was an ID. Mark Holloway, age 29. A name the local police hadn't seen in 2 decades. Mark Holloway had vanished in 1983 without a trace. His disappearance haunted the small town of Ashbury, Ohio, a quiet place with good families and dark secrets. At the time, police suspected he'd run off. But now, his body said otherwise. Someone had made sure Mark never left those woods alive. Detective Sarah Connors, newly transferred from Cleveland, was assigned to lead the case. She was sharp, relentless, and known for reopening cold cases others gave up on. What intrigued her wasn't just the murder. It was what was found in Mark's jacket pocket. A crumpled note, yellowed and nearly illegible, written in trembling handwriting. If you're reading this, I finally know who did it. Don't trust him. The words sent a chill through the department. Who was him? And how could the victim have written this note if he was already dead? Sarah pulled every record she could find on Mark Holloway. He'd been an auto mechanic, engaged to a woman named Laura Pierce, and best friends with a man named Evan Briggs, a local contractor who'd left town shortly after Mark vanished. There were rumors of money trouble, jealousy, even an affair, but nothing ever stuck. Then came the first strange coincidence. The note had been written on the back of a gas receipt, dated June 14, 2003, exactly 20 years after Mark went missing. Forensic analysis confirmed it was his handwriting, his pen marks, his style. But that was impossible. Mark Holloway had been dead since the 1980s. Detective Connors drove to the old Holloway home, now abandoned. Inside, dust and decay coated everything. But one thing stood out: an old answering machine still plugged into the wall. Against all logic, it clicked on when she pressed play. A distorted male voice whispered through the static. "They think I'm gone, but I'm not done yet." Sarah froze. The timestamp showed June 14, 2003, the same day as the receipt. Was someone pretending to be Mark Holloway? Or was this evidence that he'd somehow uncovered his own killer before dying again? As night fell, Connors stood in the darkened house, staring at the faded family photos on the wall. The phone rang once, then again. No caller ID, just silence. She picked up, heart pounding. A voice, deep and unsteady, said only one thing before the line went dead. "You're too late. He already found me." And that's when Sarah noticed. The front door was slightly open. Someone had been inside the whole time. The next morning, Detective Sarah Connors stood over her coffee, staring at the printed transcript of the answering machine recording. Every forensic analyst she'd called gave her the same response. The voice was a match. It was Mark Holloway's. But that couldn't be. The man had been dead for 2 decades before that message was recorded. Her supervisor, Lieutenant Harris, brushed it off. "Audio can be faked. Don't start chasing ghosts, Connors. Stick to the facts." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this case wasn't about ghosts. It was about someone who wanted them to think Mark Holloway had never died. She retraced his life from the beginning. Mark had worked at Briggs Auto, a small-town garage co-owned by his best friend, Evan Briggs. Records showed that a week before Mark vanished, a large insurance policy had been filed, naming Evan as the beneficiary. It was supposed to cover Mark's share of the business if he died. The problem? Mark's body hadn't been found yet when that claim was paid out. Someone in the system had declared him dead, unofficially. Sarah visited Laura Pierce, Mark's ex-fiancée, now remarried and living 3 towns over. The mention of his name drained the color from her face. "You found him, didn't you?" she whispered. "I always knew he'd come back somehow." According to Laura, Mark had suspected Evan was hiding something big, money laundering through the shop, maybe even helping move stolen cars. But before he could confront him, Mark disappeared after closing up one Friday night. The last person to see him alive was Evan Briggs. When Sarah pulled Evan's file, she realized something else. He'd moved back to Ohio 6 months ago, buying a cabin near Carson Ridge, just a few miles from where the body had been found. She drove there alone. The cabin was half hidden by tall pines, the windows dark and lifeless. But when she knocked, the door creaked open. Inside, the air smelled of gasoline and dust. On the table sat a shoebox filled with cassette tapes, each labeled in neat handwriting, MH Recordings. Her hand trembled as she played one. "Evan's lying. I have proof. If anything happens to me, this will explain everything." It was Mark's voice, calm, steady, terrified. The date on the tape, June 14th, 2003. The same day as the note and the gas receipt. Suddenly, footsteps crunched outside the cabin. Sarah froze. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of a shadow moving toward the porch. The door slammed shut behind her with a force that made her drop the tape. The room went dark as the power cut out. From the corner, a flashlight flicked on. Not hers. A man's silhouette filled the doorway. "Detective Connors," the voice said, smooth but tired. "You should have stopped digging." It was Evan Briggs. He looked older, heavier, but the cold confidence in his eyes was unmistakable. "You're trespassing," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Evan smiled faintly. "You think this is about Mark? You're chasing the wrong ghost. He was supposed to stay buried." Sarah reached for her gun, but before she could unholster it, Evan threw something on the floor. A worn, mud-stained envelope. Her name was written across it in shaky handwriting. "Sarah Connors, for when you finally find me." She hesitated, then picked it up. Inside was a single photograph. A young Mark Holloway, standing beside her supervisor, Lieutenant Harris. In the bottom corner, scrawled in ink, were 5 haunting words. "He knows who killed me." And in that moment, Sarah realized. The man leading her investigation had known the truth all along. By the time Sarah Connors drove back to the precinct, the sky was the color of rust, heavy clouds swallowing the last trace of daylight. She parked in the back lot, gripping the envelope like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. The photograph of Lieutenant Harris and Mark Holloway burned in her mind. Inside, the station felt wrong. Too quiet. Harris's office door was closed, the blinds drawn. Through the frosted glass, she could see the faint outline of his shadow. Moving, pacing. She walked in without knocking. "You worked with Mark Holloway," she said flatly. "Why didn't you tell me?" Harris didn't look surprised. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. "I was hoping you'd never find that out." Sarah dropped the photo onto his desk. "He left this for me, with a note saying you knew who killed him." Harris picked up the picture, stared at it for a moment, and smiled faintly. "I did know him. We worked a case together. He was an informant for the department, trying to expose a car theft ring operating through Briggs Auto. He got too close. Evan Briggs wasn't just a mechanic. He was laundering money for men who owned half this county. Then why cover it up? Sarah demanded. Why fake his death? Harris's jaw tightened. Because Mark didn't just disappear. He switched sides. He started working for them. We found out too late. He was going to sell us all out. The night he vanished, we went to confront him. Things got out of hand. Sarah felt her throat tighten. You killed him. He didn't deny it. It was supposed to end there. But someone dug him up 20 years later, trying to make me pay for what happened. That someone was you. Harris stood, slowly reaching for the gun on his desk. You weren't supposed to find the tapes. Her heart pounded. I didn't find them. They found me. He frowned. What the hell does that mean? Sarah slid her phone across the desk. On the screen was a video. Grainy. Time-stamped 2 hours earlier. It showed Evan Briggs in his cabin, sitting in front of a camera, his voice trembling. If you're watching this, it means Harris killed me. And probably her too. Mark wasn't the traitor. Harris was. He used us both. Sarah didn't blink. Evan sent it to my phone automatically. He had it set to upload if anything happened to him. For a moment, Harris just stared. Then his face twisted. Anger, panic, maybe guilt. He lunged for the phone, but Sarah was faster. One motion, her gun was drawn, safety off. Don't, she said. The sirens outside answered her instead. She'd sent the video to Internal Affairs an hour ago, before walking into his office. When they led Harris away in cuffs, he didn't resist. But as he passed her, he leaned in close enough for her to smell the coffee and gun oil on his breath. You think you found the truth, he whispered, but you never asked who dug up the body. She froze. What? Harris smiled, a hollow, broken grin. Because it wasn't the hunter. It was Mark. He was still laughing when the elevator doors closed. Weeks later, after the dust settled, Sarah sat alone in her apartment, replaying the audio from Mark's old tape. She'd listened 100 times, but tonight she caught something new. A sound under his voice. A faint, mechanical click every few seconds. She ran the file through spectral analysis. The clicks weren't random. They were coordinates. When she entered them into Google Maps, her blood ran cold. The location was an unmarked field, 10 miles from where they'd found Mark's body. The next morning, police excavated the spot. They found a buried safe. Inside, 3 VHS tapes, all labeled with her name. The first one began with the same haunting voice she'd heard that night in the Holloway house. You found my killer, detective. But now, who will find yours? The screen went black. And that's when Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. June 14th. Don't be late. The same date as every clue. The same day Mark Holloway supposedly spoke again. She stared out the window, city lights flickering like dying stars. Somewhere out there, someone was still playing the game he started. And for the first time in her career, Detective Sarah Connors realized maybe the dead never stop talking. If you thought this story was intense, her voice would have whispered to the viewers, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe before the next body speaks.